So I just want to say, if you want to see my review of The Conjuring, I also said that's on my main channel, Kabam Studios. But I also said in that video that there are 6 movies. I was incorrect about that. Um, Apparently, La Llorona, La Sharona, My Sharona, whatever you want to call it, is part of the Conjuring universe. And it's not included in my set, so I'm not going to review that one. I'm going to review the rest of them. And I've never wanted to see that movie anyways. Heard not so good things, so. But if you know the correct chronological order in which I should watch them, put that down in the comments below, because I'd like to know. I did watch some movies, though, so let's talk about it. I only watched about 3 things here. 2 movies in a series. That's right, I watched the whole series in one day. Not a long series. I actually just finished it literally a few minutes ago. But I watched The Post. The reason I finally watched this is I meant to see it in the theater. I never did. It's a Steven Spielberg kind of political type thriller. And I was meant to see it because I'm a Spielberg fan. I love Spielberg. I'll watch anything he does. Even if it's not great, I'll at least be like, yeah, I liked it. It was well directed. It's decent. I've never actually watched a film of his that I've been like, that is just straight up terrible. Besides, I don't know, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But even then, I hesitate to call that a really terrible movie. It's just, terrible compared to the other Indiana Jones movies. But you watch this movie. So I always meant to watch it, just never did. I'm not even sure why I didn't. I just never got out. But it was $6 at Best Buy, so I picked it up a couple days ago. And this movie is... I guess the story behind this movie was that Steven Spielberg read the script of this movie, and he pushed this movie into production because he felt like it was very timely. And of course, this came out in 2017. That's how long I haven't watched this movie. But I need something to watch, and $6. Steven Spielberg. I want to own all of his movies, to be honest. And so I sat down. And I think that's really interesting because, this is 3 years later. And he thought this film was relevant 3 years ago. So I'm watching a film 3 years later to see if it's still relevant. And I think it is, because this is a film that is part of history. And this is something that really happened. Basically, the point of this story is that you have the Washington Post. And they have these documents that say what really happened with America's involvement in Vietnam and kind of some of the cover-ups that they did. And so so a lot of this film is debating on whether or not that they should publish these, because what is honest, true journalism? If they don't, should they do it? Are they going to get sued? A lot of kind of political kind of intrigue into this idea, and kind of the idea of what should the American people be allowed to know through news sources, and how much should they be allowed to trust them, and kind of different things. And it's interesting because I think it's still relevant, because we still are. I think we're going to be in an era with the internet and many other different things where there are going to be news sources forever from now on. I mean, there's always been news sources that were untrustworthy and things like that. But this is now, there is so much fake news out there that it's almost impossible to find 100% accurate information, even though even though there's so many different sources now, and that's what makes it hard. And so a film like this is interesting. Where I think the film fails is the first act. The first act of the film is going into detail about how they print papers and stuff, and I'm like, if you sat down to watch this film, I don't think that's what you'd want out of the story. But then once he gets the hands on the documents through the second act to the end of the movie, it is completely engaging. But it's just that first half that's just like, really? This is what we decided to focus on. And it gets, and like, I don't think it ruins the film. I just think it's just like, could have been a bit better. Of course, Meryl Streep is fantastic in the film. She's a fantastic actress. No surprise. Same thing with Tom Hanks. Just absolutely incredible. The acting here all around is incredibly well done. It's the cinematography, the editing, everything that you would expect out of a Steven Spielberg film is here. It's fantastic. It's an incredibly well directed film. Just if we'd fixed up that first act, I probably would have rated this an 8 out of 10, but now it's a 7. I really like the movie though, and I'd recommend it if it sounds interesting to you. So next up, I didn't watch all 4 of these movies. There's Batman Returns, Batman Forever, Batman and Robin. I only watched Batman 1989. And I kind of wanted to discuss this movie at some point, and I guess this is my chance to do so. I don't like Batman 89. Well, I do. See, this is my problem. Tim Burton is a director who's made good films. I have respect for him. I don't consider him like this great auteur or anything. Like, there's a fair portion of people who do. But his films are so strange and weird and stuff like that that sometimes it just gets in the way of him making a good film. But let's start with how this movie kind of came into being. With Burton was gonna direct this film, and Burton didn't know anything about Batman. He had never read Batman source material, and I think, for the time, this is the best Batman film you could have made. With one exception. The third act was terrible, but they had a writer's strike, so it couldn't really been helped. But besides that, this film is about as the best Batman film you could have made. And it's not a Batman film, though. Batman kills people. He doesn't act like Batman, and that's my problem with this film. Also, his love interest throughout the film, she's so bland. I can't remember her name. She's uninteresting. She has nothing to say or do. She's just so bland and uninteresting. And it's just like, yeah. And the Joker kind of acts like the Joker, but kind of doesn't. Like, he's obsessed with Batman, but he's obsessed with Batman because he dropped him in this bowel of acid, and so he wants revenge, kind of. And so he's, like, obsessed with them. But he's not, but he doesn't just act like a crazy maniac who's just obsessed with Batman just 'cause. He completes him. You know, it's like, nope, I'm pissed off at Batman. And then the choice that they made to kill him off at the end of the movie, like, the Joker, his best villain, you killed him at the end of this movie? I mean, I was like, really? Really? I would have, because it's like, I'm sure that if this movie had been a big enough hit and they hadn't done that, they would have brought him back in Batman Returns, and it would have been a better movie, I think. The set design, the cinematography, the kind of matte painting look to the film are absolutely incredible. It's so incredibly beautiful. One of the best films ever made. In terms of like that matte painting look, I think it's gorgeous. But the score here by Danny Elfman, incredible. All the performances, you got Jack Nicholson, who's creepy as hell in everything he's in. It's one of those actors that if I saw him in real life, I'd probably be afraid to walk up to him and say hey, I love your work, because he's so freaking scary. We're talking about the guy who's Jack Torrance in The Shining, And it's an incredible film. I think in a lot of areas, this Batman movie would have made it a great Batman movie if it just would have been an actual Batman movie. But it didn't go that route. But it's still fine, and I respect everything it did for comic book genre and stuff. Hello, Loki. You want to say hi? Alright, come say hi in the video. Want to say hi? Say hi to the people. He's looking at me. He wants me to come say hi to him. And he was mad I ignored him to make this video. I'm sorry. Hey, Daddy, talk about his show. Okay, well, he's going to talk about his show. So, I watched The Tick. This is a Milk Creek release. This is the entire series. It's only 9 episodes long, so that's why I watched the entire series. It's not very good. I can tell why this was so short is probably because it just wasn't very good. Patrick Warburton is like a good choice if you're going to do a live action Tick. But they clearly didn't have budget to do a lot of the superhero stuff we do now in TV shows and stuff. But that's not my problem. My problem is like it just didn't know what it wanted to be. It was kind of like, let's be adult, and then let's be a kid's show. And it's kind of like, it didn't have any of the humor and fun energy that the new Amazon show does, or the cartoon from the 90s, or the comic, or any of that stuff. It wasn't terrible by any means. But it was just kind of like, they did try to be funny, but it just doesn't feel the same. I think there's not much fourth wall breaking. That's why I think this is a show that is best forgotten. It's not very good. It's kind of meh. It wasn't horrible, but yeah, I watched it. And as a fan of The Tick, I'm glad I watched it and I own it, but besides that, there's no real reason to watch it. It's kind of eh.